Former senior advisor to President Barack Obama and political strategist David Axelrod sat down with ATV to talk about his life, the Obama years, and what his plans are for the future. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with all of us this evening.
Excited to be here.
Have you been to American University before?
I don't believe I have been to American University, which is odd because I worked in Washington for a couple of years with the administration, and the history of American University. JFK made a famous speech here and so on and such. And I also know that there's a lot of activism here, a lot of interest in politics and in public service. So it's odd that I haven't gotten over here, but I'm glad I made up for it today.
And we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
And you talk about the passion of students. You know, you yourself were a tremendously passionate student. You know, you immediately, after graduating from the University of Chicago, majoring in political science, you went to work for the Chicago Tribune.
Exactly.
And, you know, your mother was a journalist as well. So was she an integral part of you making that decision? And why didn't you choose to go into politics earlier? How come the journalism route?
Interesting story. You said I was a passionate student. I was passionate, but I wasn't that passionate about being a student. I was passionate about politics. I was passionate about news. And so when I went to the University of Chicago, it was a wonderful, wonderful school, but I couldn't find anybody who would talk to me about contemporary politics. And at that time, as today, Chicago was a very vital political arena. So in order to satisfy my interest, I started writing for first the student newspaper and then a local community newspaper, and I started stringing for Time magazine, the Washington Post, and just spending most of my time writing about what was going on in the city, in the politics of the city. So I got an internship at the Chicago Tribune, and that led to a job. And I spent 8 years at the Tribune, and I ultimately was the City Hall bureau chief. I was a political writer and a columnist, and it was a great training for what was to come.
And being so involved with Chicago politics, you worked with Harold Washington for his re-election campaign as the first African-American mayor of Chicago. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, I had the great good fortune to be in Chicago during a time of historic change. I saw the city change from the last of the big city machines. The first mayor, Daley, was the mayor at the time, and a very famous political machine, to the development of the black independent political movement in the city that propelled Harold Washington to the mayor's office. And Harold was a really fascinating figure. He had been in the Democratic machine. He kind of rebelled, led a movement for change and reform, and was this very larger-than-life figure, and really changed the politics of the city and changed the racial politics of the city. I think ultimately very much for the better. Without that, I don't think there would have been the opportunity for Barack Obama to get elected to the United States Senate, and of course without that, he obviously would not be president of the United States today. So it was a pretty important period in the history of Chicago.
And, you know, talking about that whole grassroots mentality of the campaign, working for change, for hope, and for you especially, when you were younger, you campaigned for Robert F. Kennedy, handing out flyers in the Bronx Zoo, selling campaign buttons, and when he died, you know, you've said that idealism died with him. For you, how did American idealism become revived with people like Harold Washington, with Barack Obama specifically? Well,
you know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because when Senator Obama was considering running for president, I told him that the last really idealistic campaign for president was Robert Kennedy's campaign in 1968, and I saw young people like myself back then mobilized by that sense of hope and possibility. And I said, we ought to try and replicate that. That would be a great service to the country, whether we won or whether we lost. That would be a great service to the country. And of course, it was the only way we were going to win, was to mobilize young people and rekindle that sense of possibility and idealism. So there's a direct connection between my experiences as a young guy back in the 60s and the kind of direction I tried to bring to the campaigns that I was involved in.
And certainly that idea, permeated through the 2008 campaign and then the first term of President Obama's presidency. And in 2012, approval ratings not so great, 43% approval ratings from Gallup, the economy's in the tank. How did you pull it off? How did you get the second victory?
It's you're right. I remember those days, and I remember that there were a lot of people in this town who were very much beginning to write the president off. They said no president had ever been elected with an unemployment rate that high, that his approval rating was at dangerously low levels. But I always had hope, because I believe that elections are comparative processes. People make choices, and they're presented with two fundamental approaches to how we should move forward as a country. And I really believed in him, and I believed in the choice he was offering, and knew that when we had a chance to make our case, that we would make up a lot of ground, and that's what happened. I also looked at the Republican Party, and I saw, even when we were at our lowest point, when we lost the midterm elections, I felt that the seeds had actually been planted for our victory in 2012, because some very strident voices had gotten control of the Republican Party, and I knew whoever became the presidential candidate would have to yield to those voices in order to be the nominee, and that's really what happened. Governor Romney had to make what I would call Faustian bargains with the right on immigration, and some on contraception, and on a series of issues. He went farther to the right than any candidate could, and still expect to forge a national consensus. I will honestly say there was never a point when I thought to myself, we're not going to win this election. I always believed we were going to win it. Knew it was going to be hard, knew it was going to be tough, a tough battle, but always had confidence.
And now that your tenure at the White House is over, you still are heavily involved in the political arena, very strong opinions about various issues. Speaking of the recent issue about gun control policy, what is your personal investment in gun control?
Well, I live in an urban area, and every night on the news I see stories about particularly young people being injured or killed, often innocent young people caught in the middle of gang crossfire. And those weapons are often supplied illegally by straw buyers who buy them in big lots and sell them to street gangs. I think we can save lives by having more rigorous laws about that require background checks, that crack down on gun traffickers, straw buyers, and that's my interest. My interest is as a parent. My interest is as someone who I've had a child who's had significant health problems in her life. At times we wondered whether she was going to make it, and we've had lots of friends who've lost their children to epilepsy, I just don't want to see any more children lose their lives. I don't want to see any more grieving parents, and I think that we can deal with these issues and still respect the right of hunters and sportsmen and people to protect themselves in their own homes. I don't think the two are inconsistent.
And spending time with your family, of course, is going to be something that you will have more time to do on top of being so busy.
That's the theory.
The University of Chicago Institute of Politics, you're the inaugural director.
Yes.
You have a memoir coming out. Tell us about all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, well, this is all the stuff that's fighting the notion that I'm going to have a lot of time to spend with my family right now, but hopefully I can do all of it. Well, the University of Chicago Institute of Politics was something that I had in my mind even as I was finishing my tenure at the White House and going through the campaign. I wanted to create an institute there that would provide what wasn't there when I was there, which is an opportunity for young people to meet practitioners in the field of politics and related fields: journalism, strategists, pollsters, media consultants, policy advisors, speech writers, not just from the U.S. but from around the world, because what I want to do is inspire young people to consider careers in the public arena. There are a lot of bright kids there, but the University of Chicago's been most expert at producing scholars, and I want to also have the University of Chicago as a place where where they produce leaders who impact on the public debate and discussion. And having spent just a brief time there now, we just opened in January, I'm absolutely confident that that's going to happen. I've been so inspired by the young people that I've met there, and we're having a good time. And then the memoirs is an opportunity to just recount this journey that we've talked a little bit about today. I've been fortunate enough to be sort of in the bird's eye seat for 4 decades of change, and with some really interesting characters and wonderful figures, including and most particularly the president. So I'm looking forward to telling my story and sharing those experiences with others.
And I have to ask, I can't even imagine what it must be like having to think of a title for something like that. Do you have any ideas in mind?
You know, I really don't. I was thinking about it. I had a provisional title on my proposal, which I won't share, but I think that what I'm going to do is start writing, and I think the title will flow from that text.
And you know, speaking of current events and the presidency, only a few hours ago, 2 pipe bombs went off in Boston at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. Do you have anything to say to the people of Boston? Well,
I think we're all grieving for the people of Boston, those who've lost their lives, those who've lost loved ones, those who are grievously injured. But what I also think is important to note is that when things like this happen, we pull together as a country. We're not Republicans and Democrats. We're Americans, and we pull together, and we'll pull together now. But it's a reminder that we live in a challenging world, and we have to be vigilant about events to prevent events like this as best we can, and we have to be aggressive about dealing with them when they happen.
I just want to say thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me, and on behalf of the Kennedy Political Union, again, thank you so much. This was so fascinating and interesting.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
And we really look forward to seeing what you have planned for the future.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.